In 1980s, the Rebbe did another unprecedented thing. He allowed the Farbrengen to be televised. Actually, it wasn't television. It wasn't cable either. It was satellite, hook up, down, up and down, I don't know. It was cutting edge technology. There were these huge cameras in the Farbrengen. There was this huge dish on the roof of 770. And the Farbrengens were satellite broadcast. And everywhere in the world, they were picking up the Farbrengen. It was amazing. They had a number at the bottom of the screen for anybody who wanted to call in to find out what they're looking at. We got a phone call from a United States Navy ship out in Greenland. And there were two Jews on the ship. And they were playing with the remote, and all of a sudden there's a Farbrengen. They were fascinated. One radio host in Canada told me that he accidentally came upon the Farbrengen. He says, I just couldn't look away. I couldn't change the channel. I just sat there and cried. I said, why were you crying? The Farbrengen is a happy occasion. There is singing, there's l'chaim. What were you crying? He said, it's the first time in my life I saw a Jew who was completely comfortable in his Jewish skin. I mean, this was broadcast to the world. And the Rebbe Farbrengen exactly the way he would Farbrengen if there were only singing. Completely comfortable in his skin. And the Rebbe went out to the world as a Rebbe, speaking Yiddish. And I had the privilege of being the translator.
11213. We now go live to 770 Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn, New York, where thousands in attendance are waiting for the Rebbe to appear and begin his address.
This is Rabbi Manis Friedman from St. Paul, Minnesota. With me is Rabbi Herschel Greenberg from Buffalo, New York, and we will be providing a simultaneous translation for you this evening and guide you through the Farbrengen.
So I got to tell you this little incident. For 8 years, 6 times a year, there were satellite hookups for the Farbrengens. I never thought, how did I get the job? How did I end up being the translator? There was no training for it. And I went to the library. I thought, let me do this professionally. If I'm going to do it, let me do it professionally. I go to the library. I take out a book on simultaneous translation. Now, where do people do simultaneous translation? At the UN. So the book was mostly about the UN. And here's the advice that they gave. First of all, look over the notes carefully. Which means every speaker gives his translator his speech in writing in advance. Well, that wasn't going to happen with the Rebbe. So that piece of advice was gone. The second piece of advice was, don't hesitate to use the red light. The speaker had a little red light on his podium, and if he was going a little too fast for the translator would push a button that meant slow down. Well, that wasn't going to happen by a Farbrengen. There was nothing in the book that was useful, because this is unprecedented.
The Rebbe would expound on a variety of subjects, as he'll do tonight.
Yes, I hear it's a very difficult one tonight, very scholarly piece, and you ought to translate it verbatim.
Yeah, we're going to be offering a simultaneous translation.
So, I don't know. How did I get the job? So years after the Farbrengen stopped, I happened to be talking to the Rebbe's secretary who was in charge of the hookups. And I said, how is it that Rebbe trusted me to translate his words? Did you tell him that it was good and he trusted you? He says, the Rebbe never asked me. I said, so it was your son who organized the whole thing? He was the authority? He told the Rebbe it was good? No, not that I know of. I said, so how did this happen? I'm translating the Rebbe's words to the world. Who approved it? He says, you know, the Rebbe lets everybody use their talent, and if you're willing and you're doing it, he's fine with it. So this is way too personal to be that casual. So I found out that after the second Farbrengen, they brought a little player into the Rebbe's room, and they played one talk, one sikha for the Rebbe, with the translation. The Rebbe listened to the whole thing. Someplace during the taping, he smiled at something, didn't say anything, and when the sikha was finished, he said, thank you very much, and they took the machine out, and that was it. So I asked Rabbi Krinsky, I don't understand. If the Rebbe was going to check on my translation, why didn't he do it after the first Farbrengen? Why did he wait after the second? Listen to what Rabbi Krinsky says. He says, you think the Rebbe was checking to see if you were doing a good job? The Rebbe was checking to see what he could do to make your job easier. And then I remembered that at the third Farbrengen, I translated a phrase that the Rebbe used a lot, with more strength and with more power. That's how I translated it. At the third Farbrengen, the Rebbe used his expression, that common expression, and he translated himself. He said, with more strength and more enthusiasm. I got it. So it was true. He was checking to see how to make it easier for me. And that's the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Partner with Rabbi Friedman. Visit itsgoodtoknow.org/support.